Hey guys, how are ya? Thank you for clicking onto the video today. In this video I'll be showing you how we transform this GQ into this to this behind me. So let's get started. Before we get into the video, I need to explain a few things about the international project. If you want to skip this part, go to the time on screen where we'll be getting into the GQ build. Now if you've been following along with this project's been the last few videos on the channel lately. However, we've put it off to the side so we don't have to worry about it for a while. I'll explain why. So I'll explain what we've done so far. We've started by joining the cabin onto the patrol firewall and floor pan. So that includes this little bit here, the sides that are down there, and same with that other side, including this little top piece here. As you can see here, the wheel's too far forward on the guard. To fix this, we would have had to move the cabin further forward, except this is why we didn't do it. As you can see here, the dash is sitting inside. It's sitting on the original patrol mounts on the patrol firewall. If we had brought the cabin further forward, the dash would have been too far forward inside the cabin and would have been sticking out, which that would also affect the vents for the windshield, as it would be further away from the windshield and it wouldn't work. And moving the cabin forward would have meant that there was less room inside of the cabin. So we had to put the cabin where we put it. In the last episode, we chucked the guards on to see where the wheels were in relation to the guard. However, with the guard it's not a big deal because we can chop sections out and move the wheel arch further forward. That's not a big deal. The issue is being the front here. This chassis wasn't going to be the one we ended up using. We'll just build in the body on this one because we can lift and take it off easy with no engine or driveline in the way. Our plan was to take this body off and put it on the chassis with the TD42 in it. However, after some measurements, there might be some issues. It would be a very tight engine bay with these guards cutting in a long way before the bonnet scoops up, which isn't a big deal, but it's something to consider. So here you can see the front of the guards. This is the original radiator support, meaning the radiator sits on the inside of here. When we tried lifting the front on to see where it would fit, it didn't have enough room. The chassis rails were sticking too far out and was in the way. Now playing with some ideas, if you were to cut the chassis rails, you'd get the front on, except you'd have less room for your radiator. You can't push the engine any further back, as that's the original patrol firewall. And with the TD42 known for getting hot, you wouldn't want to run any smaller of a radiator. We could have cut the end of the chassis off, except with this chassis not being the one we wanted to use, we didn't want to do any modifications to this one, as we'd have to do it to the other one and this one would become useless. But even after you do that, you still have the issue with the engine bay. So the other idea is to not have the TD42 in it, continue using this chassis, make it work and put a different engine in it. So we're playing with some ideas and thinking a 4J would suit the situation much better. Only being a 4-cylinder, it would have given us a lot more room in the engine bay to play with, and they can make better power easily and they're more reliable. So we've put the project off to the side for now while we think of ideas on how to overcome these issues. Anyways, enough yapping and time to get to the GQ. Future me here, behind me is what you'll see in next week's episode. But I'd also like to discuss what this has. Click up that corner if you want to see the first episode where we picked it up. So this car is a 1997 GQ Patrol Ute. It's running a blacktop NA TD42 in it with a claimed rebuild of 70,000 Ks ago. Under the front and rear, it's running GU diffs. In the rear, it's also running an ARB air locker. So our plan for this GQ build is to be able to transform this from this to a nice modern looking tourer with a goal of spending no more than 20 grand. At the end of each video, I'll be doing a little score on how much we've spent on it so far. Anyways, let's get started on some bodywork. We're going to start off by seeing if we can get the TD42 running and seeing if it will drive into the shed to start some bodywork.
I'll start by connecting some jumper leads up from another battery to see if we'll give it enough power to fire up. Once running, I disconnect the leads and put in a comfy seat so I can drive it into the shed. It was a bit tricky to reach the clutch with all the cables in the way, but once it got moving it was alright.
Now that it's inside the shed, we can start to have a look at it to create a plan. I'll need to disconnect everything that links the body to the chassis so we can lift the body off so then it can be painted, and then we can access the engine better.
Before I start removing anything, I disconnect the battery. This makes it safer to work on all the cables. The first thing I'll remove is a coolant overflow bottle. It doesn't necessarily need to be removed right now as it won't affect the body coming off the chassis. However, it will clean the engine bay up a bit more, making it easier to see what needs to be disconnected. There's just 2 bolts at the top and 1 at the bottom, then it could come out. I'll make sure to put all the bolts back in its holes so when it's time to put it back together, I have all the necessary parts. The next thing I'll be removing is the cables on the back of the alternator. Before I disconnect anything, I'll make sure I take photos of everything. This makes it easier when putting it back together because I will then know where everything has to go. With all the things that have been disconnected, I add a little bit of tape with a label on them. Not only will this protect the plugs, but it will make it obvious which cables belong where. This vacuum hose will also need to be disconnected. Once I separate them, I put some tape on the ends to stop anything from getting in there and a label so I know where it belongs. The main earth lead is run to the mount on the airbox. Once I pulled the lead out, I put the bolt back in tight and then just tuck the lead out of the way. Then I took some more photos and removed these plugs. They're a little tricky to remove because of some dirt, but once they're out, I'll put some more labels on them. I can start to remove some of the body panels now, so I'll start with this front guard. It's only held in by 1 bolt at the top and 1 at the bottom. Then I pull out a stand so when I take the door off I've got somewhere safe to put it. There's only a few bolts holding these hinges on. I crack them first and loosen them most of the way. then getting an extra hand to help hold the door while I remove the bolts. Once removed, I took it over to the stand and laid it down. Now the bodywork begins. We start by preparing the sills. These have been replaced on the body, but they just needed finishing off. Once prepared with the grinder, the welder came out to start finish welding the parts that hadn't already been welded. I pulled this guard out of storage. It's a bit dirty, so I'll give it a clean so we can see how bad the condition of it is. I'll pull the hose out and I'll get started. After I hose down, it's cleaned up a bit more. I'll get out this foam so I can give it a bit more of a clean. There was a dent in the back wall which had already been fixed off camera and smoothed off with some bog. Now we're just doing the side of the cab. After many layers and sanding, the back section was complete. There were 3 holes in this pillar before. They were used to mount a snorkel, however we won't be using these holes, so it was patched and filled with a bit of weld and then completed with some bog. These final welds on the sills will just complete the joining process of the sills onto the body. There was some leftover residue from the rear window seals which needed to be removed before paint, so I used a paint scraper and some metho to remove the rest. Some of the bits that were stuck in the paint were removed with some sandpaper. Everything we wanted paint to stick to had to be sanded, so I was working on the back section. I was using sandpaper to remove little bits of dirt stuck in the corners, as well as some surface rust. To prepare the surface for paint, we'll be using some thinners. And now it's ready for undercoat. Hey guys, so now the bodywork's done, the cabin's got some undercoat on it. That's all we'll be able to get for today's video, except I'd like to discuss some price figures. As I mentioned at the start of the video, we're trying to do this project for a maximum of $20,000. So I'll be explaining how much it's cost us so far. Go ahead and guess in the comments on how much it cost us, and I'll explain what we have here. So as I said earlier, the Patrol has GU diffs under it, an air locker in the rear, a TD42 with just over 400,000 Ks on it, and we've got a few spares, so I'll show you them. In this box here, we have 2 spare brake rotors. This one here's got a new clutch kit in it, a new brake mask cylinder, and in this box here we have a brand new headliner and heaps of spare cabin parts like plastic clips, the clip-in zip ties, and heaps more. The stuff that we used in today's episode was free for us as it was just leftovers from other stuff that we had. So in total, to where we got to today, that cost us $6,000, meaning we have $14,000 to build the rest of this Patrol up to a tourer. Anyways, thank you for watching today's episode to the end of the video. If you liked the video and would like to see more, make sure you like and subscribe as it's the best way to help us out. I hope to see you on the next video where we'll be lifting the cabin off. See ya.